One of the beauties of Intuiface is it enables you to work with APIs. There's many different kinds of APIs accessed through different programming languages, but the general notion is always the same. An API, an application programming interface, is an interface to an application. It enables one application to take advantage of another, to work with another. Intuiface is an application, right? I guess what you're building in Intuiface, that experience, is in one way an application. And because it supports APIs, your Intuiface experience can talk to other applications and take advantage of what those applications provide, the services they provide. Could be sports scores, could be weather reports, restaurant reservations, or maybe it's the back office ERP application your company uses. Web APIs are the best because any service that's in the cloud probably has an API, and Intuiface loves to work with web APIs. It's so simple. We even have a tool dedicated to working with them called API Explorer, and that's what I'm going to show you in this video because I think you might fall in love. What I have running in Composer right now is one of the marketplace experiences. It's a dad joke generator, and it also measures people's ratings, their votes of those experiences. So this voting machine generates dad jokes, and then you can vote on them. I'm going to play this experience in Composer and just show you what happens. We'll do this very briefly. So we have a little splash screen at the front, and then we have a dad joke on the left. Did you hear the one about the guy with the broken hearing aid? Neither did he. 1 to 5, is that a good joke? That's like a 2 or a 1, right? So we'll give it a 2, submit. We're generating some data points that shows up in the dashboard on the left. You got a little, frankly, that's a picture of me responding. One more, why does a chicken coop only have 2 doors? Because if it had 4 doors, it would be a chicken sedan. You know what? I'm smiling. That's not bad. Is it 4? I don't know, but let's call it 3, and I'll submit it. So we're uploading the rating. We get a little comment from me in the bottom left. Here's the question. Where are these dad jokes coming from? We're not generating them here in the experience. They're coming from someplace else. Well, in fact, they're coming from something that makes them accessible through a web API. Let's take a look at that. So there's this website called I Can Has Dad Joke. Okay, it's a very intuitive name. And what you can do is there's a button here. See the new joke button? I can click the new joke button and I can generate new dad jokes. Nice. But we're here because of APIs. And take a look, bottom right, API. Let me click API. It turns out I Can Has Dad Joke has a web API. There are multiple ways one can interface with a web API. What we care about in Intuiface is if there's a curl statement or what's called a request URL. You can see a curl statement here where my mouse is. See this under endpoint? Here's the get. That's a request URL. This is a really simple web API. Literally, all you do is take this web URL, send it in a request URL, and you get a dad joke back. It is really, really simple. So let's go back into Composer and see how you use it in Composer. How did we do that? On the left-hand side of Composer in the Interface Assets panel, you can see Get Dad Joke. This was generated by API Explorer. Let's go check it out. I'm going to open API Explorer with that request URL we just saw and take a look at what is actually happening when we submit that request and get an answer. So here we are. Let me move this to the middle of the screen a little bit. You've got the request URL here. You couldn't have a simpler API. All you do is you're calling that URL. That's all you're doing. There's no other parameters. And like any web API, when it gets a request, it sends a response. And that response is typically formatted using 2 different approaches. One is called JSON, one is called XML. The good news is it doesn't matter. API Explorer can read it. What you see under result is the response from that web API. It's sending back 3 fields in that response, something called ID, something called joke, something called status. Every time we send a request to that URL, we get a result. And there's a joke field, there's a joke parameter that has a joke in it. So back here in the experience, I want to show you how we're getting that into this experience. I'm going to hide all the stuff in the intro level, exposing the joke that's coming to us from the request. Stay with me on the left, Jokes UI. In there is a field called joke. You see that field called joke? And it's got that little symbol on the right. That little symbol means the value, some property of that joke text asset is coming from someplace else. I'm going to click it. And it's telling me the file. I'm clicking on it to get the details. So look, what we know now is that the text asset called joke is getting its value from the joke property, the parameter of that web API. You can see it over there on the right. It is bound to that property. So let's take a step back. What that means is any web API on the planet, you can call it, get a response, and take values out of that response and use them in your experience. I'll take this one step further. It doesn't have to be a single response. Very often, that web API response could be an array of values, multiple values with different indices, 1, 2, 3, 4. Maybe it's a list of sports scores or a list of news articles or a list of products of a variety of SKUs. Intuiface can work with that as well. It's an array of values, and if I bind it to something in Intuiface, then it creates multiple instances of that thing. It acts like a template. There is so much you can do with web APIs and Intuiface thanks to API Explorer. API Explorer makes it so simple for you to work with those APIs, incorporate them in your experience. That means you're getting data in real time. And by the way, it's not just reading. You can push information as well. Maybe you're turning on the room lights or you're interfacing with some thermostat. I don't know. If it has a web API, you can work with it, reading from, write to. It's amazing stuff.